call this Board of Education Executive Work Session to order on Thursday, December 1st, 2022 at 6:29 p.m. according to my clock. We're a minute early. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Linda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2.01, Mission, Vision, Core Values by Aurora Laura with our consulting firm, Insight Education.
Okay. Well, thank you. Happy to be back and see you all again. Here to share with you two things. One is to just update you on the strategic planning process and tell you kind of where we are and what's coming next. And the second thing is we did take the draft core values, vision, and mission that you did last time, and we got feedback from the steering committee. So we're going to share that feedback with you today and see if you want to make any revisions to the draft that you made. So that's our purpose, or our objectives. So in our strategic planning update, this is the overall timeline, and we have been having steering committee meetings. We started them in October, so up to now we've done 2 steering committees. At the first one, we had the steering committee look at strategic plans from other districts to identify what features they liked and maybe didn't like out of the samples, so that they could identify what they hoped to see in our final one. And then this past month, we looked at the vision, mission, and core values and had them do the same activities so they could generate some of their own ideas. And then they looked at the ones that we came up with as a draft and provided some feedback on those. So that's what I'll share with you today. When we meet with them again in January, what we'll do is look at district data. We're also going to share the survey data with them, and we're going to work with them to identify some potential big priority areas. So most districts usually come up with about 4 to 5 like big priority areas or buckets of work. And so that's the focus of our January meeting. And once we kind of nail down some priority areas, then we'll work on the actual goals and strategies that go into it. So the other thing that we did in October is we administered the survey to our stakeholders to ask them what are some of their priorities that they would like to see reflected in the strategic plan. And we also asked them what they would like to see in students when they graduate from our schools. So I'm going to share those results with you in a minute. There will be another opportunity for the community to participate in focus groups and be part of this process. And that's through the focus groups that'll happen in February and March. So what we'll do is share with them the priority areas and get their feedback on, do these feel like the right ones? If not, what are other things that are really important to you? And we'll go through a revision process based on the things that we hear from stakeholders. And we are still on track to bring you a final strategic plan in April or May. So now I'm going to share with you the results of our survey. We got 545 responses to the survey, 16 community members, 17 people who are employees and parents or guardians, 91 employees, 205 parents or guardians, and 216 students. Big picture, what we looked at is what are the areas that came up most often in those surveys. And the biggest ones that came up are mental health and social and emotional wellness, educational equity for all students, school safety, high school readiness, graduation and postgraduate success, and employee recruitment and retention. So what we'll do, so this is what came out of the survey from stakeholders. We'll do a similar activity after we look at data with the steering committee and work with cabinet then to kind of mold these into what are the 5 big categories we want to have. But this is what we heard from our community and our families and stakeholders. So when we asked the students what are their hopes and dreams as they graduate from our schools, they said they want this to be a place where every student can learn regardless of their background. They want all graduates to find success after graduation in careers or college. They want all students to have access to the same learning opportunities. They want to make sure our district has high quality and helpful teachers, equitable and safe schools, and a quality education and educational programs. So these are the priorities most important to our students. For the employees and families and community members, here are the priorities that they have for our district: to achieve academic excellence, increase rigor and innovation, high achieving students, make this be an equitable and inclusive learning environment, developing the whole student, so including social and emotional learning, increase district diversity, resource support for students and teachers for success, high quality teacher recruitment and retention, school building safety, access to academic opportunities for all students, and to make this a source of pride for graduating students. So that kind of sums up the big overall themes that we heard from the surveys. Any questions or comments about the survey results themselves?
Would you go back to the student piece? And I can't remember if this was multiple choice or if this is a distillation of open text boxes. Do you have a sense of what students meant by state in the equitable state schools?
We probably don't have detailed information. It probably means different things to different students. When we do focus groups, that could be something that we go more in depth in when we do ones with students, just to get more input on what that would mean to them.
And as far as these topics, are these things that students felt like exist or don't exist currently? Do we have a sense of that?
I don't think it probably didn't decide like whether it exists or not. It's like their dream for the district.
Okay.
And so some of it probably does, but this is like their ideal situation in the district.
So I just, what was the timing again in October? Or was it early October, or what was the duration of the survey?
At least 14 days. Sometimes we keep it open for 3 weeks. And I don't have with me the exact date we released it. Okay.
The intent of my question is, I'm wondering, based upon recent activities that have happened within our region, if that might be different now for our students based upon the safety.
And I think, your question is really important to understand there too, because the students might mean a completely different thing with regard to safety. Like, I think the wording was slightly different, but it said a similar thing for the non-students. I mean, it could actually mean like psychological safety. It could mean, so I think we definitely dig into that further. Get more info.
Yeah. So when we do the focus groups, and if we want to move them up a little bit earlier, even than February, we can do that. But we can add whatever questions we want to based on what we heard in the survey. So that can be an area that we delve into. Any other questions or comments?
I also just want to make a comment that I feel like the students are so clear. Like, these are such crystal clear things that, like, it almost gives me goosebumps that they like have this much clarity about like what we should expect an education to provide for them.
Yeah. Great. All right, go ahead.
Notice the similarities across the groups. While the language is not specifically the same, there are some similarities. So I am interested when the focus groups occur, how do we distill down what specifically that is so we can have a clear picture as we identify goals as we move forward.
Yeah, definitely. And we will do many hours of interviews, of focus groups, so we actually do just get a lot of anecdotal things that show up that we can then kind of share out holistically.
Can you advance to the next slide? I wonder if another aspect we can drill down on is that third bullet. Is that intended to mean diversity of staff and instructional leadership? Is that intended to be students? Is that holistically the entire district population? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, that'll again be something we could dig into in the focus groups. Okay. So next I'm going to move into the core values, vision, and mission that we came up with. In core values, if you remember, a core value is a way of being or belief that we hold most important. Living into our values means that we do more than profess our values, we practice them. We walk our talk, we are clear about what we believe and hold important, and we take care that our intentions, words, thoughts, and behaviors align with those beliefs. It's a quote from Brene Brown. And just another reminder, core values direct the behavior and decision-making of an organization's employees. So last time we looked at core values from different districts, and then we brainstormed together. Our sheets are over there of our work. And what I want to share first is we did the same activity that we did with you. We did it with the steering committee, and I wanted to share kind of the words that came up the most when they did it, before they looked at the core values that you came up with. Students goes with first. So students first came up a lot. You can see equity, growth goes with mindset, and then relationships. So those were some of the things that were really important to the steering committee. Okay, so these are the draft core values that we came up with last time that we shared with the steering committee. Courage, inspiration, success, belonging, and integrity, with equity embedded in all the core values. And what we said is once we identify what they were, we will write descriptions that go with each of them, similar to what the other districts did. And that's one comment the steering committee said, we want to just make sure that we define what we mean by these words. Okay, but so here's our feedback. The things that they really liked were courage, belonging, equity being embedded, or not being called out explicitly, but showing how it's woven into everything the district does. Integrity, belonging, diversity, belonging. I put it more than once if it came from lots of different groups. Courage, once again, equity being interwoven, and belonging. And their ideas for strengthening, that we want to define what we mean by those words. Success can be subjective. Show how and where we need courage. So a lot of this goes into the definition and how we define those. Consider combining integrity and courage into the term leadership. Add descriptors for the terms. Belonging should not be perceived to be conforming. We should celebrate individuality and consider weaving that into belonging. And then some other words that they liked that they thought we might consider were students first, joy, wellness, and excellence. So what I did is I kind of bolded the things that they really liked, and then I just put some of their ideas basically for strengthening to summarize it. So courage, belonging, integrity, people really like those, and having equity embedded. And then ideas for strengthening, yes, we're going to add the definitions. We got the idea to maybe combine courage and inspiration into leadership, and then consider adding students first, joy, wellness, or excellence. So based on that, and I'll put that slide back up in just a second, but I want us to open up the conversation to talk about, are there any revisions that we might make? Some of these comments might have just been felt by one person, some might have been felt by multiple people, so you're not required to take any of these, but talk as a group to figure out, are there some adjustments that you would like to make based on the things that you've heard?
Two things jump to mind for me. That, if you just look at the word itself without considering how equity ends up getting embedded in it, I can see how the objection would come up. Specifically success, if we have one view of what success looks like, would seem like it's too limited. But if you have success embedded, with equity embedded to say success looks different for different people, then I think that takes away that concern. And then it's a similar thing for belonging. Belonging doesn't mean everybody has to conform in order to belong. Belonging plus equity means that it's more expansive than that.
Mm-hmm.
That's my thought, that just on their own, they may not do that, but adding equity should solve for some of those concerns.
I would say for all of the bullet points, actually, by adding that, because it is subjective. If you look at this, what's heard to you, by adding equity in it, you meet that definition, right? No.
Did the steering committee have access to our scribbles?
No.
Because I have to say, when I look at our draft core values, they are so vague that I can see how they're uninspiring. And I want to go back and say, there was a reason that we separated courage and inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been worth it for them to know what that was and how we got there. Because if you just look at those 5 words, they're not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're talking. They're not enough. They don't speak to the depth of conversation and the depth of meaning but I get that's how core values are. so because as I looked at, I was like, wow, inspiration didn't get any votes. And then I went and I looked over there at success and inspiration, and I saw excellence over there with success. And they have excellence over here, so there's some same ideals that I think we're all, it's that description, that definition, clarity of words. Definitely one word isn't going to do it.
Yeah, and I will say they didn't really vote on him. It was just when they looked at him, they're like, "What do you like?" And people are like, "Ooh, I really like this and that." So anyway, it's not that they didn't like those. They didn't say they didn't like him. It was more like the others really jumped out at them. So.
Well, I guess that for me, inspiration jumps out. It's the fact that it didn't. Because for us, if I remember, inspiration was about innovation. It was about being creative. It was about growth and mindset and imagination and joy. And so the fact that it didn't pop out.
Well, I wonder if we just, if we should consider a different word to mean that same question. If it didn't come out, for sure. I think we talked about belonging as being like, not just a concept that's important to us, but also a concept that's been tested as far as how do people respond to that. Does it bring that same list to mind that people it does for us?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe inspiration isn't the right word. Maybe we need to take a different one to that concept, or that concept.
Or it could be that in the definition that we write, it actually kind of gets at what they meant when we actually explain it. I think that actually would clear up some of it because we didn't have those yet, but we wanted to finalize the overall concepts before we start to write the definitions.
I guess I wonder, to Annie's point, if we codify the core values that were identified, would that change the perception of how they view inspiration? So I do think that could help, especially if we're saying that equity will be ingrained in all of the core values that have been identified.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, I know we went back and forth quite a bit between success and excellence too. If excellence really does resonate better for the community than success, I think that's something that I could be sort of, swayed on. Yeah.
The other one that I don't remember if anybody ever mentioned it or if it occurred to me at the time, but opportunity is is further upstream than excellence or success. Those are outcomes and all of that, but I think it's also kind of an important part of that. That you're not going to force someone to be successful. Maybe you inspire them, you motivate them, you give them tools, but that's an outcome that children themselves need to be involved in some way. But having that opportunity is also really important. So we're not going to say that we fail if any students don't meet our specific, here's what we say success looks like, but we're going to give them an opportunity to figure out what success is for themselves and then make that happen.
I think part of that conversation was success looks different for every student. I do remember us spending a lot of time talking about that.
And even belonging was different for every student. Yes. Because even just the students that are taking along, they really figure out who they are. Instead of trying to think of be who you want them to be or think they should be. So.
In looking at the survey findings, students focused on success. That was the word that they had in the second bullet for all graduates to find success after graduation. The community said to achieve academic excellence. I'm not sure that gives us a guidepost, but yeah, and thinking about how this might be perceived by the learners in our building. Is success a term that actually is more empowering for them?
And excellent can be somewhat discouraging, depending on the student, how they look at it. Because I find that some of the clients I'm dealing with, so I try not to use the word excellent with them, but success and what success looks like for you. So, and that's where we are giving the students for the success with you. Every job not college material, and that's okay.
I feel like I'm hearing that we're not necessarily feeling drawn to change anything, but it's to take this input certainly into the definition.
Mhm.
And I'm sure we could continue to split hairs on this for a while, but.
I would agree with that.
No one likes to wordsmith anything.
So, yeah, what we can do then is work on writing some definitions that would go with these to try and incorporate some of the feedback from the steering committee into those definitions. And what I can do, since we'll bring the steering committee back in January, we can share those with the definitions and get some more feedback just to see, before we do the priority part, see if those resonate a little bit more with them when we write the definitions. And then next time I'm back, we can just share what the final feedback was and if there's anything else we want to do.
So before we use this one, I do think, the fact that, and maybe the order didn't really mean anything, but the focus on, student social, emotional well-being, does that show up in, when we see that embedded in one of these, maybe several of them, belonging?
I would say belonging. My heart tells me belonging.
I can see it as success as well. When you think about psychological safety, success in the supports that they get, I think could actually capture that too. When I think about safety nets and the success that they provide.
And those, personal, care is also something that you have to get the skills to be developed. Whether it's physical activity, routine, or mental wellness. I think that's all tied up in this class.
I would also say that in thinking about the survey data that HYA compiled, the mental health and social emotional wellness was also a piece that surfaced too. So that's a thread that continues to go through with the piece that is coming out in the information from our student group as well as the community group.
So maybe it's not appropriate to say that equity and social and emotional wellness would be embedded on all of these, but it almost feels like there is an element of that in them. Anyway, we just make an intentional effort to look for that and spell that out actually within the definition.
Or I would ask that once the definitions are compiled, we have an opportunity to have the board to review those to give feedback before we take them to the steering committee, just as a thought similar to the process that we did, because we wouldn't want them to give feedback and bring it back to the board and have to go back and make adjustments.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, great. Well, what I probably will do is work with the superintendent and her leadership team on the definitions. Starting in January, I'll start meeting with them most likely weekly as we start to iterate, write out some of the drafts of things to get feedback. And so I'll work with that team to write the definitions, and then we'll bring it back to the board. And then after the board's looked at them, we will take them back to the steering committee. So, okay. All right. So next I'm going to go into vision. And, vision is where we're going and what do we aspire to achieve. After that, this is just kind of how we build on the elements, but then, then we'll talk about mission, and then we kind of work on the strategic plans and the activities or actions that will help us meet those goals. So the vision describes what the organization hopes to achieve or be in the future. And what we realized last time is that what you had originally written as a mission, we felt like was probably actually the vision. And so we have the vision of the Maplewood Richmond Heights School District is to inspire and prepare students as leaders, scholars, stewards, and citizens for a diverse and changing world. So here are things that we heard from the steering committee that they really liked. They liked the words inspire and prepare, thrive in life, no matter what journey a student takes. They like the terms leaders, scholars, stewards, and citizens. They thought about, Oh, this is when they looked at some other ones from some other districts. They said they really liked what one of them said about every student feels loved, but they said, how do you make sure the impact matches the intent on that? They liked preparation. Stewardship and citizenship are really important in our culture and climate today. They like, again, we heard they like the use of the cornerstone words, leaders, scholars, stewards, and citizens, and they liked the phrase for a diverse and changing world. Some of the ideas for strengthening, and I will summarize these on the last slide, but consider using empower instead of prepare. I know we had a discussion around that. Define what leadership means. Somebody asked, do the cornerstone words still reflect where we are and what we hope for in the future? Some people said we could have a stronger connection between the core values and the vision. They said it's very similar to what we've used in the past. One group said it sounds sterile or just common and could be any district's vision. One group said maybe we should think broader than just students. Someone said consider deleting for a diverse and changing world. And see, this is where you're hearing just individual, people have different views on everything. Someone said, is steward the best word? Is it redundant with citizens? I think sometimes some of them weren't sure what's the difference between steward and citizen. Consider using inspire and empower. Consider adding the word challenged. Consider using a word that's stronger than prepare. Challenging each student to reach their potential, and consider adding that we want our students to be advocates and empower them to create a better society. Okay, so here's our summary, and I think I've got, just one slide on summary. All right, so overall I bolded the things people really liked, which is basically the whole thing. The mission of the district is to inspire and prepare students as leaders, scholars, stewards, and citizens for a diverse and changing world. Okay, and then I summed up what they said in terms of strengthening. Might want to change it, use empower instead of prepare. Connect it to the vision, connect it to the core values. Debate around the word stewards. Is it the best word? Consider challenging each student to reach their potential, and then consider adding that we want students to become advocates and empower them to create a better society. So, based on this feedback, are there any changes you'd like to make to this draft? Or things you'd like to just discuss?
The only thing I'm curious about, we all sometimes go over the difference between stewards and citizens. So would there be any room behind taking out steward and substituting it for advocate?
So I love steward partly because it seems to me about preserving the things that you already have. And in particular, I think of it in the context of climate specifically. And I saw this when I was looking at students' scholarship applications where they had to say what they semester, and that seemed to be like the thing that resonated for steward, which I think that, we can steward institutions and like conceptually, like a school district, for example, too, but like stewarding resources, stewarding things that we want to protect, to me feels a little different from citizenship. But I do think that there was some confusion and some, not everybody sees the need for both of those words. Maybe we spell it out a little bit more if we do use the both.
So just thinking historically, what stewardship meant, or stewards meant when this was originally crafted, may not necessarily mean. The intent probably isn't what your intent was, but the word steward has evolved within culture and society, right? So it can mean, I know in my life what steward means, it's something different than maybe what our seat at the table program believes it is, or even what our neighbors and community members think. So I'm just thinking back to the original intent when this was first written. I was very clear what that meant. Now that word has just evolved into something different in society. So, but it was very clear that this was around our seat at the table, everything that involved with our gardens, and at that point it was very small. And now it's much like the word equity, it's what you do, right? So I'm just adding that for context.
Like the chicken stewards, is that what?
Chickens weren't here yet. When that was but that's how the chicken stewards got their name. That was a vision.
But that is, like, I think, a connected nuance that both of you are playing out here, that, like, steward is like is our relationship with the physical world, whereas, like, citizens is like our relationship with other humans, right? Like, and I also think that advocate, although it doesn't have a ship thing, but I do think advocate could be, like, updating for where we're at today might be a word to add. I mean, and maybe it's not replace it, maybe it's just add. Yeah.
It was interesting, the group that I was in, when we were having this conversation, spent time talking about stewards, but coupled it with service. And so I found that to be very interesting and what they thought it was, and not necessarily, I think, the origination of it when it first was identified. And so I do think it evolved. And so how do we make sure that when we solidify our vision, everyone knows what each of those words mean?
One other thing that I thought about is, we say we want to empower students to create a better society. That is a more active relationship with this diverse and changing world. Like, the way it is now is almost like, hey, the world's going to change around you. It's going to be more diverse. Let's get you ready for that. But, like, it doesn't anticipate that the students are part of that change. And we can maybe just connect those things in a more active way, actually, with a slight word change that we thought of yet.
Where would you put the word advocacy, Katie? I know that you and Rachel both said that that would be a good addition, and I would probably say I agree. When I see how our students advocate on a regular basis in, a very intentional manner, I do think that we cultivate that. But when I read the current vision, it does not demonstrate that.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably just put it in that leader, scholar, steward, citizen, advocate. That's an interesting point that Mandy makes too about a more active role in the future as opposed to the passive observer of this diverse and changing world. Yeah.
I put advocates a little bit exclusively there. I put advocates further up. Like leaders, scholars, advocates, stewards, and citizens. For some reason I feel somehow they're in a hierarchy, even though they're not.
And just again, I'm trying to think back I wasn't here yet, but about close. But I'm going to tell you the intent for citizens was advocates. It just wasn't. And thinking through the leader of the district at that time, that was a word. Advocate and advocacy was not a word in the vernacular that was widely used, but citizens, it was viewed as a way to, and I am not a fan of the word empower, you've all heard that from me, but it was a way at that point to empower students to become the Blue Devil advocates that they are today, but it was really probably done under the word citizen. So again, I don't know if it's evolved or not, but yeah.
I do think citizens strikes a balance between, like, we're not talking about advocacy in the sense of just like, so I think advocacy and activism sometimes get together, but like, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with activism, but I think like doing the work, the service part of it, it's not just like, throwing out why you think things are wrong and then walking away, but like sitting there and doing the work. That to me is sort of more in the word citizen than it is in some other words.
I think
structure to think about them as advocates for a diverse and changing world. The way that we structured the grammar in this, it's that they're leaders for a diverse and changing world. They're scholars for a diverse and changing world. If you read it that way, advocates for a diverse and changing world, so that gives some agency to students in that structure.
Oh my gosh, you're right, it's so complex, it is in ways. It might be inspiring and preparing them for the changing world, have all these things. Or it might be, they would be these nouns for the person changing world. And when advocate, I mean, the advocate has something behind it, you're advocating for something, and that's not necessarily the case with everything. So you're right, that makes me feel
You could change for to in the face of, right? There's different ways to sort of conceptualize why these things are important for a diverse and changing world.
So would a next step be maybe I took notes with some of the structure discussions that we had about the vision, to also bring that back with the shifts for the board to look at with the definitions for the core values? Or we can maybe hash it out.
So I think you have the words.
Yes.
It's just, you bring up a very interesting point, right? It's maybe with shifting some words here and there, it changes what this is. So I would be interested in seeing more than one draft.
Yeah.
What this
Okay.
is.
Okay.
What we can do, and what we've done in the past, is kind of take the comments and wordsmith it into a couple different versions and bring it back, and that way you can kind of think through if any of them nail it, or does it inspire you then to know kind of what you want to combine. So I can work with you all on bringing probably 3 of those back.
I think I think it's in sentence structure more than anything.
Yes.
You have the words, it's just put it in a sentence structure,
Yes.
and any word could change what this means. So I'm interested to see what you come up with.
I do agree that prepare is a little soft, that we want a more active word there, but I'm like Googling synonyms for power, and like nothing's really jumping out.
And you never know when they start playing with the sentence structure, what might just come up, or we even need it. I don't know.
All right. Well, I will work with the team, and this will be on the list of things we bring back to you. Any other final comments on vision before we move on to mission?
And power.
Okay. So the last section is mission, and the mission describes who the organization is, what it does, and who it serves. I did want to put this back in because this is what we originally had as the mission, although we reclassified that top part as the vision. And so we did the activity describing what's unique about who we are, who we serve, and what we do. And the draft that we came up with is MRH is a small inclusive school district that is invested in the creation of safe and welcoming spaces where students, staff, families, and community members feel seen, heard, and valued for their unique backgrounds, culture, talents, and beliefs. We nurture, educate, support, and challenge all students to reach their full potential. So here's what they liked. Valued for their unique backgrounds, culture, talents, and beliefs. Small inclusive school district. They liked that we included students, staff, families, and community members. They liked the phrase nurture, educate, support, and challenge all students to reach their full potential. And they liked that we included what makes our district unique. So several ideas for strengthening. They said seen and heard could be changed to appreciated and valued. Some people weren't sure if they liked invested in the creation of safe and inclusive spaces. Someone said we can compassionately nurture. maybe add something about teaching students to create those safe and inclusive spaces for other people, as well as having those spaces created for them. One group said, seen, heard, and valued. Is there a word that ties all of that together? One group said, add in something about helping students find their place in the world and feel productive and happy. One group just wondered if we're moving away from the metaphor system with studio, museum, expedition. Someone said maybe put best lives over full potential. How can we highlight the eclectic nature of our district with students, families, and staff at the heart of belonging? And are we working on becoming safe and welcoming, or are we safe and welcoming? Okay, so I bolded the things that they really liked. Small inclusive school district. Not sure about the safe and welcoming spaces, but students, staff, families, and community members feel seen, heard. I should have highlighted feel seen, heard, and valued. For their unique backgrounds, culture, talents, and beliefs, we nurture, educate, support, and challenge all students to reach their full potential. So for the most part, they actually really like this. And then just a couple of their ideas, maybe change seen and heard to appreciated and valued. Just debate and different thoughts about the invested in the creation of safe and welcoming spaces, either take it out or maybe add something in about teaching students to create them for others. Someone said add compassionately nurture, add something about helping students find their place in the world and feeling productive and happy. They wanted clarity on whether we're moving away from the metaphor, consider full potential to best lives, and then again, more comments about safe and welcoming environments, and add more in to highlight the eclectic nature. So lots of feedback there on this one. Any thoughts? Or go ahead.
So just to clarify for the board, the question about the metaphors had more to do, can you go back to the image?
Yeah.
Had more to do with that. And
Yeah.
so, the metaphors remain, but I think the conversation that they didn't have that we had was how do the core values integrate into what we create?
Okay.
So I think that was the conversation that surfaced from there. So just to kind of share that.
Yeah, well, and I would say too, that, the pillars are also implied by this graphic, and they're buried in the mission too, but, just putting it together in this particular format isn't maybe necessarily part of the process, but we do have to think about, do we want this integrated combination of metaphors, mission, and pillars in one graphic or not?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say the metaphors for me are more of an instructional piece, while it serves as the foundation to encapsulate the others, but we did spend a lot of time talking about that.
Is there any more elaboration on what eclectic means in the context of our community?
So we had all the different groups going at the same time, so I don't know if either you were with me. So were you in a group that said that?
My group did not use the word eclectic, but really it was couched in how our students show up and authentically and are okay with how they look and enter the space. And so it really wasn't about being eclectic. They didn't have a full definition of it. It was like you walk into MRH and kids show up, and we embrace that.
Yeah, how it worked is we had 6 breakout rooms going at the same time, and so there was a note taker in each room, and it's what they put on the board. So this is where we're going with what they added to the board when we collected all the 6.
It was more pointed toward the description of our district, like we're a small inclusive district, or if it was about the nature of the students. And
Yeah.
how it showed up.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I can see how the graphic gives sort of an overemphasis of the importance of the metaphors. Like the metaphors are important, and the metaphors are like an external, how we show so many of these things. This is like totally just off the cuff, but I'm wondering if there's some sort of word around like, exploration and apprenticeship that could be infused in the back in the values, and maybe that's maybe that gives some context to like inspiration, right? Like that this isn't just like a sit and get school district. This is like a joyful learning environment, whether it's the dramatic play of the studio spaces or, you know, going out and doing science experiments at Washington University as an apprenticeship, you know, kind of thing. So I can see how, you know, these are all connected. I think there could be some more intentionality in how, you know, we reinforce those various pieces throughout. That's very often, you know.
I think that makes sense, and I think that in many ways the metaphors are intended to kind of bring to life that inspiration part, you know, because it's really, I wasn't here when this happened, you can tell me if it's true or not, but you know, it seems like the idea was to think about what would inspire children at various developmental stages, and then structure and construction around that because of that focus on the value of inspiring.
As a thought, as Katie was talking and thinking about those three components that we're working on, the visual actually, for me, lends itself to building something, creating something. So if we were to think about how do we repurpose this, because I do think that part of this work is honoring what has happened in the past. I think the illustration captures that, but my wonder would be if the mission becomes the foundation, the roof becomes the vision, and then the core values are the pillars, and as we begin to unpack these, where do the metaphors sit within that?
I just want to go on record saying that I would welcome a refresh of this graphic.
I don't want to see it.
What I'm talking about. I've never been a vocal. I appreciate it, but
like a bullpen.
But the pillars have been around a while, and pillars hold us strong, but it's time to remodel. And, every house needs a little refresh.
It's a remodel.
The excavation going on outside right now.
I love it.
I've seen these on poster boards for a long time.
They're in my office.
Yeah.
Chris's office.
Okay, so words are important. Some people are very visual, right? Some people are not going to be struck by like, okay, you got exactly the right words, but they are going to be struck by this particular visual, does it? So I don't know if there's a way to like, before we throw it out entirely, just get some feedback on
A
it.
good refresh.
What does this remind you of? What do these pillars remind you of? There may be some really
Sorry.
Right, I mean, maybe this is our climbing tree outside instead, or something, yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of other, right, like, sort of visual.
So we didn't ask, in thinking about the work that we did with the steering committee, we never talked about this. So I wonder if in
Right.
the January one, we bring this back.
Okay.
And then get the feedback and maybe bring some renovated illustrations to the board.
Well, yeah, I mean, what kind of visual, you know, let's get away from the words just for a minute. What kind of like images do you see are?
If it's a house, I get that too. I'm not saying I'm against something that resembles a home. I just feel as if, to me, it just didn't feel, right now, in the current day, that doesn't feel MRH.
Yeah, I'm with, Benita, I'll just like for the committee, you know, especially our students to look at it and say, hey, if they look at that, will they understand it? What would they think? Because they might give great to put on.
They are a vocal bunch.
I'm pretty sure they are. The change is where they, you know, think about the next generation. Because it's something you don't want to constantly change, but if they see it, what would the next generation, will they even understand it, the parents too?
I think the students will probably have some really just interesting ideas, yeah, us to bring back.
Can I take us in a different? Can we talk about full potential versus best lives? Is that like?
I have an intrinsic negative feels very current. And I would hope that this lasts longer than that terminology. And it feels like something that's not going to stick around.
It reminds me of the song that came out.
Best day ever.
No, not that one. Later, Rachel.
The full potential though, like, I imagine like a thermometer or something, and like, we've decided exactly what your max is, and we're gonna say, okay, now you're at 70% of that, now you're at 90%. So I do see the concern with that, maybe best life is not the right answer, but maybe something a little bit less, that suggests percentages, and that we're at 100% of a predefined thing.
Full potential could also be your full
That's
potential.
what I'm
And so how do we get that concept, if that's not the right word, but that's the concept, was full potential was really individualized
Yeah.
achievement, success, whatever.
And I love that concept, but I do see how cooking this red way is kind of red.
Or it's indeed, and perhaps it just needs a little bit more love and wordsmithing on what that could be, because I think we have their full potential, right, which means a collective. So I'm thinking that your full potential does mean something different. So we could leave it up to the experts to perhaps come back with some soft wordsmithing on that might change that for us.
The experts at the PCC.
So there you go.
I think
Or that guy back there.
this all would make sense if we took out all the words they don't like and would be a little bit more concise. I don't know that we actually lose a whole lot if it is MRH is a small inclusive school district where students, staff, families, and community members are valued for their unique backgrounds, cultural talents, and beliefs. I know we perseverated a little bit about the safe and welcoming spaces because we really wanted to infuse that idea of belonging and kids showing up as who they are. But I think that's also embedded in value for their unique backgrounds, cultural talents.
I love that. And I love that it's shorter to do that. I was thinking of
That first sentence is,
Yeah.
there's a lot in there.
I was thinking
I think
of-
we talked about
because
it.
I think that, our schools already safe and welcome spaces is something we do need to talk about. Specifically, I think, let's suppose our schools already are today. Let's suppose 100% safe. It is still our job to continue to maintain them as safe spaces. And I agree with the person who says that we need to teach the students to make their own space safe for each other. I think that's a really important part of it too. Does that need to be all spelled out here? Maybe not. And it's definitely too many words.
And that could be in the definition of belonging, or, whatever.
The first bullet for strengthening, about helping students find their place in the world and feeling productive and happy, I feel like that is the idea that we want to be able to infuse in whatever we replace full potential.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Promise doesn't quite feel like the right word either, but I think along those lines, something that feels a little more nurturing.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
This is probably I shouldn't try to solve it now, but to me, reaching their full potential means just becoming more fully themselves. Like really being whoever it is that they are. I don't know. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
So what we can do is, again, go back, I'll rewatch the tape to get the notes from what everyone said, and we'll maybe rework a couple versions to bring back based on some of the different things that we've heard. And then you can look and see whether any of those need it, or if you want to kind of make some changes, but it'll give you a couple different ideas. Any other kind of thoughts you want to throw in there before we, for us to consider as we write the wordsmithed versions?
Shorter is better. This is our elevator pitch. That elevator, we need to be able to say this and say it like that, and I could never implement it. So I appreciate your attention to and without really missing anything.
You made it easy for us. Bolding all the words when you did.
Yeah. All right. So that wraps it up. So next steps on our end is I will work with Dr. Jamison and the leadership team. We are going to come back with definitions for the core values, and then we'll come back with a few different versions of the Wordsmith vision and the Wordsmith mission to get your feedback on those. We will also set up maybe some focus groups on the visual, or take that to the January steering committee. We can figure out if that's enough students, or if you want maybe us to do one with students to get their feedback on the visual as well, and we can bring those comments to you as well. All right. Any final words or things you want to share?
No, just excited about the work. We continue to have conversations around how do we collectively work together to move forward, and this will be our roadmap, and we're excited.
Great. All right. Thank you. Well, I look forward to seeing you again, probably in a month or so. Okay. All right. Thank you.
No further discussion, we'll move on to our action item.
I move to enter executive session in accordance with sections 610.021, subsections 2, 3, 9, and 13, and section 610.022 of the revised statutes of Missouri on December 1st, 2022, for the following specific reasons: personnel matters, real estate matters.
Second.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Maria. Call for a roll call.
Ms. Livingston?
Yes.
Captain Ewing?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Robinson?
Yes.
Olson? Yes. Rudy Cole?
Yes. Motion carries. We will now adjourn into executive session.
Okay. Thank you.